This film was made possible by our incredible backers on Indiegogo. If you missed the campaign but would still like to contribute, check the description below. And now, please enjoy our feature presentation.
The very first rock concert I ever went to was in the summer of 1981 at Disneyland. At that point, I'd been going to Disneyland about every year for about 5 years, since I moved to Orange County at the time. I was only interested in the rides and stuff like that, but all of a sudden music is kind of in my brain and it's becoming a passion of mine. Tomorrowland's my favorite part of Disneyland. If I could just retire and live there, I thought of that when I was 12 years old, like I want to live in Tomorrowland. June or July of 1981, I was at Disneyland just enjoying a day with friends. We were walking around Tomorrowland and we see these posters for this Star Wars-esque rock band called Helix. And I convinced my friend's dad, hey, we got to come back here in the afternoon to watch this show. So we went and did our Disneyland day, and we come back at the time that they were going to hit the stage, got dead center seats in the middle of the venue, and had our minds collectively blown by this rock band that was playing at the space stage beneath Space Mountain.
Ladies and gentlemen, Helix.
I've always been a giant Disney fan. It's one of the first things I became aware of as a child in entertainment. Most important in my life was the movie Davy Crockett. We all wanted to be Davy Crockett, and we learned that song.
Davy, Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
Second were Donald Duck cartoons. I loved Donald Duck. Everybody wanted to talk like him. In second grade, I would trace pictures of Donald Duck and pretend that I drew them and sell them to my friends. If I could work for a company that combined creativity with business, which I just started taking business classes in college, that would be ideal. So I cold called Disney, and I was thrilled to get the job at Disneyland in marketing. That's how I got in the door. Well, Disney Records had come into being with Davy Crockett, surprisingly, and a close friend of Roy Disney Sr. was interested in a record company, and so he started a record company inside of Disney. And they had good success with Davy Crockett, and then they didn't have much until Mary Poppins came along, and they had another big success. But each year, I was told, when he would walk into the room for sort of annual review, they'd say, well, how much money did you lose for us this year? Not fun. I had come from working in a recording studio. I had produced records, so I kind of knew my way around a little bit. One day, the word was out, they fired the head of the record company. And then I heard the really bad news is that some other guy who I didn't even know, never heard of before, was being moved over there. He was in consumer products. And so, well, that's it. And then the phone rang. And it was that guy. And he said, I'd like to meet you. The chairman of the board said I should meet you, that maybe you'd be a good person for me to have run the creative end of the music. He gave me tons of freedom, and I was off in the record business. One of the things in my background was sort of radio theater. A guy I went to college with, Jim Magon, also did radio theater recordings.
I was dying to work for Disney. That was my big goal. I was just such a huge Disney fanatic that I probably would have worked for nothing. How much do I have to pay you to work here? I was very excited. The reason they brought me in is they had just made a deal with Golden Records. Disney had made a deal to do 24 of them as read-along records, these little 7-inch, 33 1/3 records with a 24-page book. So that's what I did. I was pretty much the story record guy.
Charlie viewed the smoldering sentries.
Reinhardt's got plenty more of these, and we can't fight them all.
Let's take the air car,
replied old Bob.
So much of what Disney about was kind of book and record products. The music stuff came directly out of the movies. They had created other music, but none of it successfully. We thought, now that we've got the company stable and profitable, let's get back into the music business. The basic of a good record company is music. We have to find a way to get back to music. What would be a way to get there as a first step? Disco had done nothing but get hotter. And we just had this funny idea of doing it with Disney characters. So we did the disco record, Mickey Mouse Disco, and it seemed to be well received, but we sold 80,000 records, and that's not a hit. Bob King, who was really in the motion picture marketing division, he heard it and he came over and said, look, would you let me cut some footage to this? I think I could make a short that we could put in theaters before a movie that would be just so great, so cool. So he got together with one of the head editors, Ed Rapolo. Bob King came back with this clip that he'd put together, and it was fantastic. At that point in time, there were a fair amount of direct mail commercials on television. They're long ads running from a minute to 2 minutes.
Look, it's America's favorite mouse, all grown up and gone disco. Now you and your children can catch Mickey Mouse fever with this exciting new 9-song album from Walt Disney Productions.
We figured out, it wasn't that big a risk. You don't go nationally all at once. You went market by market, at least we did in those days. The retailers got very upset with me. If you're going to sell them directly on television, we're not going to waste our shelf space on you. So I raced around the country selling them on the idea. I said, I promise you, where this plays, your sales will go up tremendously if we can stay there long enough. Well, it worked unbelievably.
Mickey Mouse Disco was a huge hit for our company. We sold 3 million copies of that record.
This made a big mark in the business. I mean, not just in our business, but we had offers from some of the biggest labels to buy our company. Seeing what we were doing, they wanted what we were doing to maybe apply elsewhere. Of course, we weren't interested in selling. We were doing really well ourselves, and the record business was kind of shaky at that point.
Honestly, by the early 80s, I was getting to the point where if I have to do another read-along record, I'm going to shoot myself. I mean, I'd done everything I wanted to. I'd done Star Wars, I'd done Star Trek, I'd done Black Stallion, I'd done Charlie Brown, Rainbow Bride. I'd done all these different projects for our company and other companies.
We began to think what we could do next that would be the next step in things. The basis of Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney movies often was, hey, I know what we'll do to solve our problem. We'll put on a show. And my uncle's got a barn, and I've got a saxophone, and my 2 friends can dance. We'll all get together and put on a show. We'll make some money, or whatever they needed to do, it would solve their problem.
I'm going to write a show for us and put it on right here in Seaport. How about it, kid?
And it was really that spirit of, we work at this great place with all these unsung great talents. Let's put on a show. let's put together a band. Carson Van Osten, he's a fascinating guy who'd been a rock and roller and performer, who had also turned out to be a great artist in terms of drawing Disney characters and other things. So I told him what I was thinking about. I said, I'm thinking about a band. It can't be a band that's based on talent like Frank Sinatra, because they wouldn't sign with us. It's got to be a show. It's got to be something that we can do visually, something we can put on television, something we can take on tour. There weren't many examples to look to. Kiss was making noise, definitively, but there was no Lady Gaga, there was no Janet Jackson, there was none of this, or there was no Michael Jackson show, really. Everybody that did shows before were 4 guys in suits that looked identical and danced in rhythm together. So we were thinking something much more outrageous. So that was kind of the nascent beginning of thinking about what later became Halos. And Carson began drawing up what this might look like. And we went through a lot of drawings and said, what if we did this, what if we did that type thing, in a creative process. I mean, I guess you could compare this to the Cantina Band in Star Wars, but boy, did they have nothing in common with that. Coming from the music side, my thing was, well, this is likely not to work because you're trying something so radically different than anything that's done. We need a producer who understands show production as well as record production. And we have to find somebody that is intrigued with the idea as much as we are. That eliminates almost everybody. So I went to my friend Sonny Anderson, and he came up with 4 or 5 names, and I finally got to Mike Post.
So my name's Mike Post. I'm a record producer. I'm a composer for television shows. I don't even know when it was, but it was a long time ago. A guy named Gary Kreisel at Disney Records called me up with an idea, and the idea was Helix.
All of us took a backseat to Mike Post. Gary Kreisel got a hold of Mike Post and said, this is our dilemma. We need to put together a band, and it's going to be this sort of outer spacey thing. And we don't even know what to do. Basically, he was the producer of the show.
Gary had an idea, just these wild ideas about what this rock and roll band would look like, in the realm of the future, in the realm of not just human beings, but aliens and everything, that entails. So how would we staff a rock and roll band if we could choose from, not just Homo sapien?
And Mike Post said, oh no, it's no problem. We'll have auditions and we'll do this, that, and the other. But basically an ad went out in Variety or Hollywood Reporter, looking for strong female singer for this rock band. We didn't say what the name of it was. We didn't say what it was for. And we rented this sound stage down in Hollywood. There was this huge line of girls lined up to audition for this. And the first girl that came in out of this long line of singers was Laura Mumford. And I remember writing down on a pad of paper, number 1, Laura looks like a punk Snow White. And that just sort of set it for me, That's what we were looking for. It's like, we needed something that looked wholesome, but also looked hip. She fit the bill and she had great chops.
She seems authentic. You don't just sing songs for effect, you sing the lyrics like they're inside of you, like, you're bleeding the lyrics.
I remember hearing Laura and knowing that she was perfect, because she was not Janis Joplin, but close, close.
And we both thought about it a little bit and came to the same conclusion. That's the one.
We've got to design these outer spacey things, with a girl lead and whatnot. I remember looking through some magazines here's a picture of Suzi Quatro in a leather jumpsuit, and here's some fashion things out of Time magazine, that kind of thing.
And we then went on a search for the rest of the band members. We needed a keyboardist. So THOM really came to the band through Laura. The question was, she's married to a keyboardist. Certainly life is easier if that keyboardist is her husband and not someone else, but is he good enough? And as we got to see with THOM, as we had more experience with him, suddenly we found out actually he wasn't just good enough, he was really good.
We were worried because it looked like all he would do is sit there and play the keyboards on this little cart. So we wanted a kind of an entrance. So I ended up going through a lot of magazines looking for golf carts or maintenance cars. And I found one, and we wanted to mount all these different keyboards on it and put lights on it and make it look all fancy. And I go over to this manufacturing company. I show them and I say, this is the cart we want and these are the keyboards and we need this built. Now, this company is the one that put together the Main Street Electrical Parade. That's a big project, so they were used to doing these elaborate things. So when he said to me, so how do we do this? And it's like, I don't know, you did the electrical parade.
As far as developing the characters, obviously the bass player, we wanted a large person that could be something akin, a cousin of Chewbacca's. So, that's why we got a furry guy. Wasn't hairy, he was furry.
So the next I went over to makeup to work with Bob Schiffer, who was the makeup artist at Disney at the time. Bob was supposed to make this huge Wookie suit. And I remember him scratching his head like, how am I gonna make this thing? What do I use? What, polyester, fur, what do I use? And they decided, nope, it's gonna work best if it's yak hair. And it was not cheap. So we built this gigantic suit, and he's up on platform heels and everything, and he had this whole head built, and it went around his eyes, which were, they put black makeup around it, and put this head on him. I can't even imagine how hot it was to be inside that suit and trying to play bass guitar at the same time.
For Laura, she's going to just wear cool clothes and be herself. Great. The hardest one is the bass player, Roger. He's a good bassist, and like every artist at that period, they wanted to be cool and be themselves. When we started talking, we went and saw him in a club and started talking to him. He said, wait a minute, you want me to wear this costume, this bear suit? And you're going, yeah. He said, I'm not doing that.
As you can see, nothing's changed. White hair, it's all the same. I did audition, I met Mike Post and auditioned and met the rest of the folks involved. The costume was fabulous. It was well done because it was Disney. Star Wars meets rock and roll. That was the essence of it. That may have sounded, I don't know. I don't know how it sounded to people. I don't know if it sounded like it was jive, but it wasn't. I don't know how seriously you can take something like that, but it wasn't supposed to be.
We eventually came up with a percussionist who was also a gymnast.
I think, I may be wrong, but I think that was, again, Mike Post, that he was looking for something more unusual to happen. But hearing that this guy was an acrobat, it all started to come together. And then we found out later he was more than just an acrobat. He was really something quite special. I think everyone was kind of impressed with Tony because of the stuff he could do on stage.
Hi, I'm Tony Coppola. I was the percussionist with Helix. I guess I was mostly the visual part of the show. When Helix came along, I was about 6 years into a dance career. I was injured and trying to come back slowly from an injury and protect myself. I had started full-on dancing intensively for a career in 1974, and Helix came along in 1981. When they talked about this character, he was an amphibian, not a full-on frog, but an amphibian. It took a while. They molded this latex mask to me, which was very, very hot, by the way. And when you take it off, it smelled pretty bad. As well as the mask, there was like a hood and a burlap, almost like a cape and a hood, like a druid amphibian combination is what it came out to be. At one point, my character was called the Wog, W-A-A-G, as in Pollywog. So I assume my wife's name would have been Polly.
They wanted to call this little froggy guy a wog, and it's like, you can't call him that. That's a derogatory term in Great Britain. Anyone who was of any color was a wog.
And I guess it didn't stick, but they didn't really have a name for my character that I remember after that.
I was just so excited to get the backup part. I actually, secretly, of course, I wanted to get the lead, but I knew in my heart that they chose somebody a little bit more experienced for heading up a band like that. So Laura was awesome, and our voices blended well, and we got to pick out all these cool World War II and World War I pins and badges and stars and things, so that we could decorate our little, warrior space girl outfits.
We went to a club, and I don't know how we got there. I think we were going there to see Roger, but we were both impressed with Brian.
Okay, right before Helix, I was playing in a band called, I was playing with a girl singer named Rainey, and Roger got me involved with Helix. Told me, I got this job, this new job coming up with this band at Disneyland, and they're looking for a drummer, and he told me he talked to Mike Post, who was going to produce the band. And so Mike Post came out one day, saw us, and liked it, and the rest is history there.
I can't remember how we found Bruce. I just remember that the moment we saw him, we all just said, yes, that guy is just what we'd be looking for.
My involvement with Helix was I was the guitar player, songwriter of the group. I just heard Helix was looking for guitar players. I grew up with great guitar players, so all of them were out for the gig. The audition process gave me a tape, had to learn it. They probably wanted a visual kind of guitar player that was exciting on stage, so I wouldn't have done it if I had to wear the thing like THOM though. And I wouldn't have been a Wookie bear, and I wouldn't have been a friggin' percussion player as a frog. I didn't like the first costume they gave me. I almost refused to wear it.
Everybody had a costume except the drummer. And it was kind of like, well, okay, do I just come up with my own costume, or do I wear my jeans and my t-shirt like I'm comfortable playing in? And they decided that because Bruce was not going to wear that outfit, they were going to put me in that outfit. So they put me in the outfit, and it was immediately uncomfortable, because what it had was these big, puffy kind of tubes that ran across your torso. And it was in the tubes on the shoulders and stuff like that. And what it did is it interfered with my movements, my drumming movements that I had.
And then they came up with that nice space jacket that was like, okay, now we're talking.
We were very forthright in the hiring process. We said, look, this is the gimmick here. This is what we're doing, you know. You're going to be wearing some crazy stuff here, you know.
It's kind of silly, but who knows? And again, I was costumed. I didn't care. It wasn't going to hurt anything that I did outside of the band, because nobody would know I was in the band.
So it really was the thing of, let's put on a show. We have some of the best costumers, best makeup people, best choreographers, and the missing link. When I thought of it and said, wait a minute, Disneyland.
Hi there. You know, this is one of my favorite times of the day here, just about sundown. I like to be around when the lights come on. It seems like a new kind of magic takes over in Disneyland after dark.
Basically, there were numerous stages around the park, and the park was always looking for some band to be on that stage, perform for a half an hour, and then disappear, and then people were supposed to sort of gravitate toward the next show on the next stage.
Say, while you're in Tomorrowland, I suggest you take in our band over there.
Don't say maybe, whoa, yeah, yeah. Come along and dance with me. Roll up the rug. Gonna rock, do the rock chow right now.
It started out as a Tomorrowland stage. It was there before I started working there. They had a lot of different acts there at nighttime because they used to do a lot of name talent. Then, when they built Space Mountain, they put a stage in there called the Space Mountain stage, and that's where Helix performed.
Only big acts that kind of came through Disneyland played Space Mountain. It was like a little amphitheater, a small Greek theater. Outdoors, wasn't enclosed. All the other bands that I knew played Disneyland played the smaller stages. This was the big stage for Disneyland.
We did the Kids of the Kingdom during the daytime. They did Disneyland is Your Land, which is another Kids of the Kingdom show.
Disneyland didn't like the idea at all. What an unknown act when we can have these sort of bands that are known in Orange County and everybody likes. It's a big risk, and I got it. Because a band needs time to play together, to get together, to perform together, to find themselves. The Beatles did it in Liverpool, playing crummy dance halls 10,000 times. We didn't have quite that luxury. We were still facing our biggest challenge, music. I felt that at some point, the music and the image and the idea of what they were had to find meaning in a unified way.
I'm Bambi Moe, and February 9th, 1981, I started a new job at Disney. I was a copyright assistant in music publishing, and I was trying to find songs, songwriters. Since there was no guidebook on how to put together a rock band, you know, we all found out through trial and error. Oh, right. Okay, I can talk about that one I remember. Jailbait was written by Jeannie Cunningham. What would be fun is to hear it again, because she put her own spin on it, and it coming from a female voice was really like kind of turning it on its ear and giving it a really fresh feeling.
I'd been told by a number of people, if you really want to get good creds as a singer-songwriter, you got to do some writing for Disney. I said, well, I'd love to work for Disney. That's great. Okay, then you need to contact this gal. She's in the publishing department. Her name is Bambi Moe. So I called up Disney, and I said, hi, my name's Jeannie Cunningham, and I was told to call Bambi. So they said, well, yeah, come on in, and if you have any demos, bring them with you so that we can hear how you write. So I put it on, and I was pretty proud of myself because it was fresh out of the box, and put it on. And they're listening to it and tapping, and then they fast forward it to the next song, and they listen to a few bars, and then fast forward it to the next song and listen to a few bars. And then it was very nice to meet you, and we'll get back to you. So I'm thinking, okay, they'll get back to me, and I'm looking forward to an opportunity to work for Disney. Well, when the next phone call came, they said, oh, by the way, we have selected Jailbait. This is I believe this is the demo. Wait a minute, did you say Disney wants to do Jailbait? You have to wait till you're older. You'll understand, baby, I want you, but you're jailbait? Listen to the guttural. It's almost very edgy. They had just done this thing back then, which is probably why Jailbait was all over the place during the 70s, is they had just created a law that said if you're over the age of 18 and you're dating somebody younger than 18, you're in the risk of dating jailbait. And then the part we all know, sing along! Baby, but you're jailbait. Who's gonna sing this? And, well, they informed me there's gonna be a band of excellent musicians, excellent singer. Like the Wookie's gonna be 7 feet tall. The Wookie? Yeah, he's the bass player. The bass player. Okay. And yeah, and the keyboard player has and they show the stuff, and I'm thinking, oh, that's good. It must be really serious. Okay, well, it's Disney. Don't be afraid of your mama. Please. What was I thinking back then? And I said, but Jailbait? Are you sure that's gonna be appropriate for a, for a kids theme park? Oh, sure, yeah, and everybody's gonna be dressed up in Star Wars characters and stuff, and I thought, okay, that's fine.
Jailbait at first was not something that I thought would work. So I went to Ron Miller, who's Disney family. He listened to the song and he said, yeah, I get it, it's a close call. He said, really, when we get down the road, just playing it as a live performance, I'm not too worried about it. He said, if we get complaints, we have to pull it back. I was never 100% comfortable with it, but it was a pretty good song.
I remember the rehearsal process. We did it at Buena Vista Disney, and they blocked out a whole section of one of their buildings. And at the time, Tron was being filmed. So we would see these guys dressed in Tron suits. So we were all really hyped up on it.
Even finding a name was hard. That came pretty late in the whole experience.
I think we called the band Strike. We called it Starfire. I suggested Squad, which stood for SKYLAR Ward Air Defense. I mean, we had all these wacky names.
I think there might have even been a contest or something, or something that went on to try to name the band.
Partly was out of somebody proposing helix, which was a real word. Not everybody knew about DNA in those days, but the ones that did knew of the helix thing.
No, and I don't even know how they arrived at the name helix. I never heard how they arrived at that name.
Not a big fan with the name Helix.
I don't even know what Helix means. Does it mean something? Do you guys ever hear that?
I hated it. What the is a helix? What in the is a helix? Okay. I mean, kiss my helix or suck my helix? I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Do you remember any of the other names that they went through beforehand, or no?
No, but they had to be equally stupid.
I just remember we wanted to make this band look as legit as possible. And so we got a movie poster artist to do this beautiful painting of the band for coming to Disneyland summer '81. It looked impressive. It looked like something was going on. You better not miss it.
Well, I'm sure everybody was a little nervous because it was totally different than anything we had done at the stage before.
We had rehearsed a lot. We probably felt prepared. The first night you do any show, any production, where your mind goes is all the tech and the lighting and the sound going to happen?
Ladies and gentlemen, Helix.
It's a horrible venue in a way for a new band because people are just milling about and passing by. Nobody goes to Disneyland to sit down and spend time watching a band. They're eating hamburgers at the Tomorrowland stage. And it was, you know, it was like what you really don't want is a dinner theater audience.
Helix had this logo that was kind of like wings. It had an H in the middle for Helix. That was the logo that was in lights behind them on the stage.
We had some special effects stuff. I had a laser light that was strapped on the back of the neck of my bass, and you know, I would shoot the light out at the audience, and they really liked that.
They used to spray fog on the stage, right? And they wanted me to kind of jump in and ramp up and I think end on my knees. But this spray that they used for the fog machine was oil-based. So when I came in and ramped up, I slid all the way through the stage off the stage.
We did a few experiments. We listened to a lot of other people's music. There was a hit song by Billy Joel, I think it was called Just the Way You Are. And it was a very mellow, romantic sort of song.
Don't go changing to try and please me.
And I thought, you know, I could see Laura at one point to break up the show singing that to Roger. That would be bringing together who they are and so on and give it a different meaning. Billy Joel singing it, it's like, you know, you don't have to be something special. Don't go change. I think the first lyric is, don't go changing to try and please me. So it's a weird process of searching that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't.
I'll take you just the way you are.
I remember one particular thing. They had an a cappella thing that we used to did. I think we did it once, maybe twice.
One of the songs that they did, we originally heard it on an album by the Bothy Band, which was a hot Celtic band around that time. And the band learned it, and they sang it in harmony.
I remember the first time I went out to do it, I got the key wrong. So I was the one guy singing in the key, and everybody else was in the right key, so it sounded very, very strange.
So they did a noble attempt of doing it, and it was, it did not work.
After that one really horrible faux pas, they took it out of the show, which I was thankful for.
Then I get a phone call from either Bambi or Gary or Tom, and they said, so we're opening over at Space Mountain. Do you want to come? And I said, sure, I'd love to see this. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to see a 7-foot Wookiee playing bass? And your song, I can hardly wait. So I decided to take a friend of mine with me. We're sitting there and I'm listening to this whole thing. We're watching them and watching kids screaming and having a great time. And I think, well, this is good, this is good. And I'm observing the lead vocalist and I'm already starting to process how is she going to do Jailbait? Because the way that the lead vocalist sounded, it sounded as if she had been properly trained. Her breathing was proper. Everything about her, enunciation, everything was very proper. And the thing about Jailbait is it's very guttural. It's like, ooh, it's meant to be done like that. All of a sudden, a new song starts. Do-do-do-do. That is Jailbait. Oh my goodness, it is Jailbait. And so I'm listening to it and the band sounds great. They're kicking it, they're kicking it. And then Laura starts to sing. I'd say, hey, little sugar, don't wanna see you tonight. Uh-oh, you made me weak. Ooh, you give me butterflies. And so I'm hearing, oh, they've changed my words. How dare they? And she's not going with the guttural attacks on everything. So meanwhile, out of the corner of my eyes, I'm seeing the publishing department leaning forward to see what's the reaction. And Bernadette goes, start tapping your feet, smile, smile. And I go, why? Why? She said, smile, they're looking at you. I go, okay, okay. Tapping my feet, trying to get it going. It sucks.
Good. We were good. I mean, we didn't crash and burn. You know, I think there were a couple of technical things. In fact, I know there was.
It was really hot under the lights in the summer, and I would usually lose about 5 pounds of water weight every night.
I think we thought we were okay. I thought that we were doing the best we could, and you know, we were fine. The audience reaction was pretty decent.
This was, I don't want to use the word artificial, but it was manufactured. But after a while, it did get a groove.
Lighting stuff didn't work, and some of this stuff didn't work, and that stuff. And we definitely improved on the mix as we went along. It's art. It very rarely is perfect the first time.
Welcome, everybody. We're called Helix. I'd like to thank everyone for coming to our show tonight. We're going to finish up with a song written by our guitar player, Chris Galley.
She did a very good job, but I think that first night she might have been nervous, whatever. So I just hated it. And then I listened to newer versions of Laura's performance, and I thought, yeah, she nailed it.
I wasn't expecting an audience reaction. I was expecting get them on stage, get them experiencing what an audience is like, which is for good or for bad. As a real entertainer, you can't be going up there saying, oh, I'm going to be a good entertainer because the audience loves me. That's not the way it works. You gotta be, I'm going up there and I got to make these people love me. And you learn from how the audience responds to you. And they did. There were lots of little fun glitches at Disneyland. The security guards weren't too sure about these long-haired people because they didn't allow long-haired people in.
We were employees of the park, but it was a show. I do remember that there was some tension, and I think we thought that was kind of funny because we were going to go and do our show, and hey, there it is.
It was just, that was our characters that we were playing in the Disneyland world. We were the long hair rock band.
I had to sign a contract, and I was the first guy to perform with long hair at Disneyland. So I was stopped by the security guards because my hair was shoulder-length hair. And they go, we're going to kick you out. It's like, no, no, no. I'm playing Space Mountain. Shut up.
Unfortunately, I don't think everybody involved was as proud of it as I was. You know, they were a little bit more, it's cheesy, it's Disneyland. But it really wasn't cheesy. I mean, it was phenomenal.
I had moments when I had to really encourage the band. Look, I know you felt it was very disrespectful when this guard asks for your ID because he looks at you and doesn't believe you could be performing here. But they have a whole nother business they're trying to accomplish, and that's more important than my little band.
You know, I wanted to do all this pyro because, you know, that's just the rock and roll show. You know, you got to blow stuff up. But, you know, they had really strict rules. I mean, really strict rules. And we were looked at in the park as like lunatics because it was all barbershop quartets. And, you know, the rock and roll that was put on at the park traditionally was really kind of milquetoast.
Ladies and gentlemen, Disneyland proudly presents The Kay Austin Show.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome direct from the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee, Kay Austin.
Thank you. Boys, knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. Hey!
We had to be extremely careful with any sort of sexiness to the act or the language. It was really, really restrictive. So it was our job to push the boundaries and their job to hold them. Just too loud, it's seeping into other venues and other. I go, well, you know, you just can't play this music quietly. I mean, it's just not going to happen, guys, you know.
Tom was in this remote truck, and he was dressed as the stormtrooper. He had a sequencer that programmed all these sequence notes, and he could solo over it, and really impressive.
And that added a whole other layer to the overall look, feel, design of the band.
The drum riser was kind of neat, and it would rise up and blast smoke out of it and stuff like that, and the lights would flash on it as you're playing. The one thing I didn't like about it was that it wobbled, it jiggled. So I tried to keep my movements, my enjoyment of playing drums to a minimum because it would jiggle the entire stage, the entire riser, which in turn would jiggle the cymbals, which in turn would jiggle the drums, which in turn would throw everything off a little bit, and it made it harder.
Well, the fans, to use an old expression, it was teeny boppers. Bruce was probably a big star with the teeny boppers.
He had the jailbait experience, which is he would have these girls who we didn't know how old they were, propositioning him.
I do remember getting a lot of fan mail from girls. My girlfriend at the time just hated it.
Bruce Gowdy was just this really good looking, I remember he had like long dark hair and just a great smile. He was really handsome. I like Bruce and all, but I think personally for me, you know, I kind of saw myself as appear, you know. So I thought the guys in the band were cute.
If I remember correctly, Bruce would do some of the stuff where he'd come over and we'd lean against each other while he was playing a solo and that kind of stuff. Everything that a proper rock and roll band would do at the time.
He does have a solo in the thing, but you can see him just working the fretboard and just having a great time at it. But he sounded great. He was a real player's player.
And lo and behold, he was a babe magnet. There were a lot of girls who wanted to meet the guy in the bear suit because he was so cool.
All the guys I know, you couldn't pay them $3 million to get dressed up in a Wookie suit with some kind of flashlight at the end of it. All the guys I know, they would have been way too macho to pull that off. But they pulled it off, and they did great.
And I would, you know, get down on my knees and lean back and put the bass up in the air and play and stuff. It was rock and roll.
I had congas, I had bongos, which they programmed to make different sounds. These were the old-fashioned sin drums, and you could hit them and they could program them to make all kinds of ripple sounds or screeching sounds or whatever they wanted. And then I had a lot of little instruments, handheld cowbell and shakers and things like that. And they allowed me to be more visual. I could move away from the congas and the bongos and stuff. The venue, the Space Theater, I think was perfect for this group. We had just enough room for the number of bodies we had on stage, and there was still room for me to move around because, as I said, I was supposed to be a visual element. Roger was great. Roger was full into character from the first day of rehearsal. I think he created a lot of things about the character. People refer to that character as a Wookie. And if you look at that costume, you can understand that. But Roger had a special name for that character. He called it the BAHARNOTH. Like it was a cross between a bear and something else. I don't know how he spelled that, but I specifically remember Roger calling his character the BAHARNOTH. And he played that character great because we were antagonistic to each other on stage and I was supposed to bother him.
He would be an annoyance, was the way we played it. He'd sort of be bouncing around and stuff, and I'd, you know, get out of here.
He would snarl and, you know, throw his bass at me and eventually chase me around the stage, which was kind of fun. And then eventually when he chased me, I had to go up the rope and hang off and play tambourine in his face.
There's no question about the talent of the band. The players, and every one of them, including Laura, every single one of them was a really great musician.
You know, I'm looking at these shots, which are not the greatest shots, but it's like, I remember the star field looking so amazing and cool. The picture doesn't necessarily reflect that. It's funny looking at this. I have a memory of it being bigger than this, you know, in a funny way. There were a lot of songs, and I'm asked about the songs, and I can't honestly remember all of them. I mean, if I heard them, I'd go, oh yeah, yeah, that's... But the one song that I thought was incredible was Hey There Boys. I'd watch the band playing each night, and it seemed to be the one that got everybody really, really excited. I would have made this tape to play for the bosses to see if anybody would have responded to the music, so. It's a cool song. And then it builds, and then they rock out.
Laura really was the anchor. She held it together.
Laura sang her ass off, and what I loved is that voice really cut through. She obviously was an experienced performer. I think she really loved doing it. The audience really related to her. The audience loved her.
She was really the star. No matter what anybody else in the band, it was really about Laura.
My name is Tommy Miller. I was the keyboardist in Halix and the husband of Laura Mumford, the lead singer. That's basically what I did for my sequence, is just that. This is a monophonic, so you can only play one note at a time. So if you play another one, it cancels out the other one. I would play a sequence into the sequencer, so when I had my feature during the show, I would drive this cart up to the front of the stage, had these aircraft lights I'd switch on. I had 2 buttons to blast CO2 out. I'd push the button, that sequence would go boom, 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 you know, and I had it a certain chord pattern, and then I would play along with it, so it kind of sounded like switched on Bach. One night I sequenced the thing and everything was cool, and then when I drove up there, did all the lights thing, when I pushed the sequencer button, it went haywire. It just went random, ding, 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 boom, 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 all over the place. And it was something I couldn't play with. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I started, because I looked kind of like a robot, I started doing these erratic robot things, like I was having technical difficulties. And I just went, and then I turned it off and went, boom, and they pulled me back and we started the next song. And that was the end of it. I was like, oh crap, on the break they're going to yell at me. I was worried I was in trouble, but whatever. Laura and I were living in Buena Park. We had a band called Vixen. I think it was about 2 or 3 months into it, Laura and I kind of started going out, you know, and Right about that time, Laura had a connection through the U.S. military for the USO tours. She called them and they came and looked and they heard the band and they hired us and we went to Korea, Japan. We were out about 6 months, I think, on a tour. When we were in Seoul, Korea, we were stationed out of for a while, and the consulate, I guess the American consulate building, we were walking around, we found it, we went in there, and there was a line of American soldiers getting married to a Korean woman, and we just got in line and we got married, and it was just a stamp, 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 no big deal. So we said, let's just get married for the hell of it, and we did, and called our parents, and hey, we're in Korea, we got married. You did. Laura was reading a newspaper and she saw a cattle call for a girl singer, and she went up and did the audition and came home, and you know, we didn't hear nothing about it. And then a couple days later she got a call and they asked her to come back up to Burbank, and she came home and said she auditioned it. They would come and watch us to check Laura out. And I mean, they watched for hours, they'd watch her. And then that's when they decided, well, just bring him in on it. Yeah, there's a keyboard player already, he happens to be her husband. So at first I thought it was just gonna be Laura. I had already planned to carry on with the band and get another singer and let her do what she wanted to do. But you know, I guess I was lucky that I got thrown into the whole fray of it. They could have had her without me, and I would have totally been thrilled to have her go and work at Disney, you know. Her mom and dad owned a bar, that was their business, and we'd go up there and he would just announce to the bar, my star is here, everyone. And they had a guy on the piano that played, and he made her get up there. And I think that might have a little bit of, you know, angst on her for being pushed like that from her dad. But Laura was a total entertainer. I mean, she had the moves. She was not clumsy on stage. There wasn't anything they had to tell her to do. Sometimes I felt I was brought into it, so they thought it would make my wife happier if I was around her. She had somebody familiar, because it was kind of it was put on her a lot, you know. She was going to be the star of it, and she had the fortitude for it and stuff, but I guess they may have thought that me being around would help her with all that. But hell, I'm not going to stand in the way of anybody succeeding in what they were meant to do. But there was a group of kids, about 30 kids, that were there every night in the front row. And they were our biggest fans. And we'd go out and shake hands with them. Probably, you know how Disney loves to merchandise. I'm sure there was going to be dolls and T-shirts or anything. The only marketing was done was by some fans, these kids. They asked me what my name was, which I went by Tom Miller then, and I always spelled mine Tom with a H. And these kids took it upon themselves to reverse my name to Mott Rillum, which is Tom Miller backwards, and they called me Mott Rillum Beethoven from space. And they made bumper stickers with their own money. One night I went out there to shake hands, and they handed me like a packet of bumper stickers. And so these kids were doing this on their own.
I mean, there were a fair number of folks that came that would come back and come back and come back. They really enjoyed it. And they had this hand sign that they did. This was an H for Helix, and they, you know, they would do this, and they really enjoyed it. That was the thing that I thought was great about it.
Those guys hit the stage, and that pretty much changed my opinion about my big favorite thing being music forever. It blew my mind. It just, my 12-year-old brain melted, because I'm sitting here basically watching Luke and Chewie rock out in Disneyland. That was the only way a 12-year-old brain could process that.
The audience reaction was just crazed. They loved us and they kept coming back and back and back, and they'd, as I said, you know, occasionally they'd sing the top of a chorus with us. But yeah, we did feel like rock stars that summer.
They were all doing these dances like in their sheets where they all go forward together and they danced, and you weren't supposed to dance there. And they danced on their seats every night. It was crazy, these kids.
That very first time that they performed, the kids went nuts. They were screaming.
You know, and we're like, wow, you know, they're really kind of speaking to an audience, a young audience. That's who we were, you know, trying to appeal to.
And we were put on the Disney stage as more of a showcase to show us to Hollywood, to get another label in on it. And I think every night there was Mike Post and Gary, and they would be hosts to different record label executives.
And I began talking to my counterparts in other record companies because I felt like I want a legitimate record company to be their label more than Disney. So we would invite record executives down, you know, ranging from lukewarm, I don't get it, to, wow, I get it, this is really interesting, it's so different than anything else that's going on. I think in the end we were down to, I think it was at Warner's, that and one other offer, but one just came one night and said, I'm signing him, great. So we were off and running.
This was real rock and roll. We wanted it to feel that way. And so when they were planning to be distributed by Warner's, that gave it a legitimacy that Disney Records didn't necessarily have. You know, Disney Records is the world's biggest children's record label, but not necessarily the right label to be distributing Helix.
And the unifying factor was really Laura. Laura was just emerging as a star. So by time we were finishing the record contract, they said to us, look, we really just want to sign Laura. This is not a band of equals. This is a band of Laura and the group. And that was concerning because everybody had given their heart to it properly. And so we had a frank talk with them and said, look, we will have to find ways to compensate you as it goes forward, but this is the reality. It's Laura. And then when we're done at Disneyland, we'll start recording and we'll be set by then.
The last performance, we were all just glad it was over. that we could, it was, like I said, it was so hot and so kind of uncomfortable for us on the stage. And we were excited that, okay, now we've done our stage thing, now we can go into the studio and make a record.
I remember driving out to Chatsworth and recorded some of these things, and it was like, great, this is going to be wonderful.
We went in the studio with Mike, and everything was overdubbed, so the other tracks were already laid down, and we were just there to lay down percussion tracks and stuff like that.
Honestly, I thought they were amazing. I mean, it was so exciting. I just saw all this potential. So for me, I was really excited about it. It just seemed like it was only going to get better and better and better. Well, this was where their album, the first Helix album, would go. So I kind of wanted it to be, you know, in fact, I remember when I gave it to them, I said, this is not the Beatles' White Album, but with any luck, who knows? So this is kind of a treasure. Love always, Bruce Gowdy. THOM, to Bambi, keep in touch. To Bambi, thanks for sharing the beginnings. Yeah, it was. To my wonderful friend, Roger. I feel the same way. I felt that way about him. Let's hope it's not over. See you soon. You know, it sounds a little foreboding, like it wasn't going to happen. Like there might be a chance that it might not happen.
And who was that from?
Laura. Yeah, Laura.
Meanwhile, I was investigating how we might tour, how we might promote, what could we do, how we would get on television, all these other things. So we're finishing summer, they're stopping performing, we're still in the final throes of the record contract. We sign it, they give us the money, we've now basically broken even on everything we've done. The record company falls apart, the executive who signed us is gone, and we're dropped. How do we go forward was the tough question. How are we going to bring the record companies back in? We don't have a venue anymore. Do we stage it? And you just can't fake this kind of thing, was our conclusion. So we began to drift. My time was really becoming more and more difficult in terms of what I could devote to it. It was a giant swirl of things, and Mike tried a couple of things. I don't remember what his contacts were, and I tried, but it just suddenly was like there was nothing there.
Hey there, boys, spread the word around, make some noise, but keep your upside down.
I remember feeling horribly disappointed. I mean, when you think of all the effort and the energy and all the people involved.
Mainly, I do remember feeling bad for the players and singers. I felt bad for them. They worked hard. But that's showbiz.
But then just one afternoon, I got a call. That's all we got was a phone call. It was very abrupt. No explanation really of what was going on or why it was suddenly over.
I think I got another job. Disney just said, you know what, we're done. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue? And it's like, well, no, I need to make money. I think that's when my next situation came up.
Well, we knew it was our last performance of that run at the Space Theater because, you know, the weather changes and all that summer, you know, they shift over. But I don't think we knew that that was the last thing the band was going to do.
We all kind of went into a funk and didn't really communicate with each other and went about our ways.
We went to the four winds, man. Everybody went back to what they were doing before Helix. Laura got a job as a waitress at a restaurant. I started branching out and playing in bands in LA, and she was more still hooked to Disney. She felt that she couldn't be involved in other projects because, you know, if Disney called, she wanted to be on the ball with it.
Well, for the individual band members, they had a realistic perspective because they were band members. And that's what they had done before. They'd gotten gigs, play for 2 nights here and wait a week and maybe get something there. And it was a very uneven world. Laura had come from, it was really like a whole nother world to suddenly she's a star.
Take a good look, remember there's nowhere down, on our own for the top. All the tired excuses we've learned so well, tonight we make them stop. No one cares how you struggle after the lights go out. So heads high, boys, our night has come.
It was a kind of paralysis because here she was with a record contract, and it wasn't like you could just go out and be Laura Mumford and get another record contract. It was a record contract as Laura Mumford of Helix with Disney behind you. That was part of it. Without that, I don't think there was a direction. So days turned into weeks and weeks turned into I don't know how long. The other band members went out and just could get work as musicians, Laura was just really torn that she was waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen. And ultimately, the bad news was nothing was going to happen. It was over. We gave her chunk of the advance from the record company, and that was it.
And Laura got the news that the Disney thing is over. She got to keep the money, and she took her money and ran. And we got divorced, and like I had her dog. She came by and got the dog, and we went outside and talked, and she kind of apologized for running away. And by then I was all good with it, and and I didn't see her for probably 13 years after that.
There was definitely an effort was made to see how, they could bring Laura into other projects. She did sing, I think she made her Disney Records debut on Mousercise, and she sang on Ducks Dance 2. Laura doing Ducks Dance 2 doesn't necessarily promote the idea of a real rock and roll artist's career launching point, So in some ways, I don't know that that was necessarily what she was all about and what she wanted.
I'm not mad at her or nothing, I don't blame her being pushed like that, and she was just waiting every day for that phone to ring. She'd come home, that was before cell phones. She'd check that phone machine, see if Gary called or anything, after her shift at the restaurant. And then I'd go play gigs at night, and she'd be at home. I know that was frustrating for her, and it brought it to a head. So, no remorse. I enjoyed the Disneyland thing overall. It was a good thing. She gave me $5,000 of the money, so that was all right. Here's $5,000. I've got to go. I think she was pretty disappointed with that whole thing. Enough to want to run away from LA and run away from Disney and run away from me. And I don't think she was in contact with Bruce or Jeanette or any of the friends that we made from the Helix thing. She went back to LA, back to Orange County, got in an apartment, and that was the last I heard of her. Pretty amazing. And then I was looking through Facebook one day, and I saw this Facebook site, Remembrance of Laura Francine Mumford. And I went, huh? And I got on it, and she had passed away. And that she had moved to Colorado, and I guess had some complications with diabetics.
I heard about Laura Mumford. I had no idea she was gone. You just assume that somebody like Laura, who's so talented, will just go on and do great things. So it was very hard to hear that Laura hadn't bounced through.
And her friends had put this Facebook thing together. I was her only husband. I wasn't even on it anywhere, and I didn't even know she passed away until I saw that Facebook thing.
My life was like a rocket that just kept going. And so you sort of feel like it will keep going for everybody else when you're on that rocket ship. I just, I didn't have time to stop and look around and stay in touch. And it was one of the things, it's funny, when Bambi told me that about Laura, it was one of the things that reminded me why I stopped. I stopped because I didn't have enough time to have a long lunch with anybody. I stopped because I didn't have time to talk to friends. I didn't have time to read a book. I didn't have time to do what I considered what I really loved in life. So it was really hard to think about Laura out there without the support that we had given her carrying on. in a very different trajectory with a very different outcome. Really tough. It's hard to even think about now.
I don't know that I ever heard a completed track. I heard us live on stage, and I don't know if they recorded, live on stage tracks for sound as well, but I never heard a completed track.
I wanted to believe an album was out there. I'd read rumors that demos were recorded, so I figured someone may have saved them, someone may have trashed them, because that was very common practice, especially in the 70s and into the 80s, of masters not being used, just being dumped. Before CDs, record labels generally didn't save a lot of masters. I'd like to believe that I would eventually get to hear something, but until that day presented itself, I figured, maybe it will, maybe it won't.
I don't know if it's gone, and I don't know where it could be found. I was stunned that you found anything. If somebody come to me and say, I heard about this Helix, can you show me some stuff? I have nothing to show.
I wanted to keep the jacket. They wouldn't let me. They claimed it was like $10,000. Maybe back when, maybe so, but it's like, no, sorry.
Do you think that any of that stuff is lying around anywhere?
First of all, I'm not a hoarder, and I took everything that was on 2-inch audio tape and went, nope. There's never going to be a bunch of nerdy young people that come around and want to know about Helix or hear it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Podcast The Ride, the show about theme parks hosted by 3 childless men in their 30s. I'm Scott Gardner, joined by Mike Carlson. Hello. And Jason Sheridan.
Hi. So I'm at a meeting with a producer, and we get off track and discover that we're both Disney nerds, and we start trading this reference, that reference. Do you know about Videopolis? Yeah, of course, trying to best each other. And then he says, well, obviously, you know about Helix. I said, no, I do not know about Helix. His next sentence, he just tosses it off like it's nothing. Oh yeah, that's like when Disney tried to do like a Star Wars kiss. Anyway, he keeps talking, the meeting goes on. I am stuck back in Helix land. What the hell is this? I go home, I open my laptop. The first picture I see, so entranced. And I know that there is something bigger here. I'm so excited you guys don't previously know about Helix. Look at
this. Is wild.
This. Check
Holy
the Twitter.
I remember Scott texting us, like, hey, did anyone come across Helix? And it's not a word you encounter regularly.
If they were playing now in the theme park, I would make everyone see them every time we were there. I do that with much less good stuff in theme parks, so I would have had to do it for this.
I told the guys, this needs to be seen.
A group that was only there for one summer, but those who know this band loved it.
Halyx. Yes, I've seen photos of this. It's insane.
Yes.
Just for whatever reason, I think I was on a lunch break and I was just messing around online and I was looking at stuff, and Google serves up a picture of the poster in its images, and it was a link to eBay. $10 plus shipping, okay, click. And lo and behold, I won it, and it shows up, and it's the exact poster that I saw around Tomorrowland, pointing you to the space stage in Tomorrowland.
It's sort of still alive a little bit, I guess, Helix, somewhere. In some minds, we're still around.
We're talking about Helix.
Oh, okay, yes.
I love it. I think they're great. I honestly couldn't believe that it was real. Wish they would come back. I would like to see them in action someday. The cult is building. People are shouting in the streets, Helix, Helix.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's really cool. I'm just sorry that Laura's not going to be able to see it, because she was a real big part of Helix.
I've been doing this my whole life. I'm 74 and I've been playing since I was 6. You can't play me any music I don't understand intellectually. But the art of it is like, God, why is that so meaningful and moving emotionally? Well, you can apply that same magic and same mystery to why something makes it and why something doesn't make it. There is a big, giant part of this whole thing that is magic, and sometimes the magic just doesn't happen.
She's probably the best singer I've ever seen or been around. You know, I still bring her up to people. I said, God, I wish my first wife was still alive. You talk about a singer, phew, that girl could belt them out.
Helix was not a success. It was not a disappointment. And it's not bittersweet. It was a joy from beginning to end. I wouldn't trade that time, that experience, that pleasure of being with those people, trying to do something creative and getting as close as we did. It's what it was. It didn't keep on growing. It grew to a point and just had to stop. All shows come to an end.
Hey there, boys, spread the word around. Make some noise, but keep your upside down. I said, hey there, boys, shoulders to the crowd. Here's our chance to get what we've been wanting now. Take a good look, remember there's nowhere down. On our own for the top. All the tired excuses we've learned so well. Tonight we make them stop. No one cares how you struggle after the lights go out. So heads high, boys, our night has come. So get set, boys, let the curtains rise. Bodies poised, ready to hypnotize. I said, hey there, boys, steady on we go. Here's our chance to get what we've been wanting. So take a good look, remember there's nowhere down. On our own for the top. All the tired excuses we learned so well. Tonight we make them stop. No one cares how you struggle after the lights go out. So heads high, boys, our night has come. Take a deep breath, boys, and good luck to ya.